They told him she was already gone, that the cold had claimed her hours ago, that lifting her frozen body from the
We
mud
move
would
at
be
dawn, no
pointless,
delays.
a waste of
Sir, the
time,
flanks?
a
Cover,
waste of
just follow
resources
orders.
better
Yes,
spent on the
sir.
living.
Please
But
tell me
Sergeant
you'll be
Nathan
safe.
Cole pressed his
I
fingers
promise I will
against
come
her
back.
neck one more
Can't
time,
bear this.
searching for something everyone else had stopped looking for. Life. The scream cut through the April morning air like broken glass. Lass sie ist tot, German. 3 women in tattered uniforms stood 20 feet away, their faces twisted with something between desperation and resignation. One of them, perhaps 35 years old, with gray streaking her matted blonde hair, repeated it in broken English. Leave her. She is dead. 3 hours already. Please not waste time. But Nathan Cole did not move. His fingers remained pressed against the woman's carotid artery, feeling nothing but cold flesh. No pulse, no warmth, no life. Just a body lying face up in the frozen mud near the latrine trenches of Fort Stockton's temporary detention facility. Her German Medical Corps uniform was torn and filthy. Her blonde hair formed a halo of ice around her head. Her skin had that particular blue-gray color that comes from profound hypothermia. Lips purple as bruises, eyes half open and glazed like frost on windows. She looked like a corpse. She looked like she had been a corpse for hours. And here is where I need you to understand something. Before we go deeper into this impossible story, before we explore this moment where life and death blurred into something medicine could not explain and morality could not resolve, take a second to like this video and subscribe to this channel, because what happened next would challenge everything these soldiers believed about mercy, about justice, about what it means to be human. These are the stories history tries to forget, but forgetting means we learn nothing. And this story, this true story that unfolded in Texas in the spring of 1945, will make you question everything you thought you knew about enemies, about humanity, about America itself. Outside the barbed wire fence, the Texas sun was rising. The sound of cattle lowing drifted from the ranch next door. The smell of coffee and bacon floated on the wind from the American mess hall. Normal life, American life, just a few hundred yards away. But inside the fence, a different world entirely. The woman lying in the mud wore the uniform of a German medical auxiliary. She had served in a concentration camp, a place where thousands had died under the supervision of people like her. And now an American medic was trying to save her. Why? Why save the enemy? Why spend precious resources on someone who had stood by while others died? The answer to that question would haunt Nathan Cole for the rest of his life. And it might just haunt you too. Let me take you back. Back to how this moment came to be. Back to a Texas morning in April 1945, when the world was about to change forever. April 13th, 1945. The war in Europe had 11 days left, though no one knew it yet. In Berlin, Hitler was hiding in his bunker. In the Pacific, American forces were dying on Okinawa. And in a small corner of West Texas, a temporary detention facility held some of the most complicated prisoners of the entire war. Fort Stockton, a small town in the middle of the desert where cowboys still rode horses and people still left their doors unlocked at night, where the sky stretched so wide you could see weather coming from 50 miles away, where the Pecos River cut through red rock canyons and the wind never seemed to stop blowing. This was not a place anyone expected to find Nazis. But war has a way of bringing the world to your doorstep, whether you want it there or not. The facility had been built hastily on an old cattle ranch. The corrals that once held longhorns now held human beings. The water troughs meant for livestock now served prisoners. The windmill that had pumped water for generations of Texas ranchers now turned slowly in the April breeze, providing for a population it was never designed to serve. And what a population it was. 200 survivors from concentration camps, liberated from hell only to find themselves in limbo, waiting for somewhere to go, waiting for someone to claim them, waiting to find out if anyone from their families had survived. And 40 German women, former guards, former nurses, former administrators of the death machine, transferred here for interrogation, for testimony, for judgment. The Americans who ran this facility had expected to find victims on one side and perpetrators on the other. Clean lines, easy categories, good and evil separated by barbed wire. They were wrong. Nathan Cole arrived at Fort Stockton 3 days before the incident in the mud. He came with the 358th Infantry Regiment, 91st Infantry Division, battle-hardened veterans who had fought their way across France and into Germany itself, men who had seen things no human should ever see. Nathan was 32 years old, born in Nashville, Tennessee, the son of a surgeon and a nurse. He had grown up with the smell of antiseptic and the sound of heart monitors. The rhythm of life being pulled back from the edge of death was as familiar to him as his mother's voice. His father had told him something on his first day of medical training, words that would echo through his entire life. Son, this profession does not allow you to choose your patients. You heal the sick. You do not ask who they are. You do not ask where they come from. You do not ask what they have done. You ask only two questions. Are they suffering? Can I help? Nathan had carried those words through North Africa, through Sicily, through the beaches of Normandy, and the hedgerows of France. He had saved American soldiers. He had saved German soldiers. He had saved French civilians and Italian children. He never asked. He just helped. Until today. Because the woman lying in the mud was not a soldier. She was not a civilian caught in crossfire. She was a participant, a cog in the machine that had murdered millions. She had worn the uniform of the oppressor. She had stood watch while innocents died. For the first time in his life, Nathan Cole had to ask himself a question his father's wisdom did not answer. Does everyone deserve to be saved? Let me tell you about the other people who were there that morning. Because this story is not just about Nathan Cole, it is about all of them, and each of them carried their own burden into that moment. Captain David Park, 34 years old, commander of the facility, born in San Francisco to parents who had fled Japanese occupation in Korea. He understood what it meant to live under tyranny. He also understood what America had given his family, a chance, a future, a place where your past did not determine your destiny. Park had complicated feelings about this assignment. On one hand, he believed in American justice. On the other hand, he had seen what the Nazis had done. He had walked through the camps. He had smelled the death. And part of him wanted every single person who had participated in that horror to face the harshest possible punishment. America saved my family, he once told Nathan over coffee. But that does not mean I will save everyone who helped Hitler kill people. Then there was Danny Kowalski, 26 years old, medical technician, eyes still full of idealism, though that idealism was being tested more every day. His grandmother had died in Treblinka. His entire extended family in Poland had been wiped out. He hated Germans with a hatred that was personal and deep and impossible to argue with. Danny looked at the German women in the facility and saw only murderers. He did not see complexity. He did not see nuance. He saw the people who had killed his grandmother, and he wanted them to suffer. James Washington, 30 years old, African-American soldier from Alabama. He understood oppression in ways his white comrades never would. His grandfather had been a slave. His father could not vote until he was 30 years old. He had grown up in a country that told him every day that he was less than human. And yet, here he was, wearing the uniform of that same country, fighting for it, dying for it, believing in what it could be even when it failed to be that thing. Washington had a perspective that no one else in the facility shared. He knew that systems designed to crush people could turn anyone into a monster. He knew that the line between oppressor and oppressed was thinner than most people wanted to believe. And he knew that the only thing that kept you on the right side of that line was choice, daily choice, constant choice. The choice to be human even when everything around you was inhuman. And then there was Lisa Park, David's younger sister, 30 years old, head nurse of the medical team. She had worked with Nathan for 5 years, through North Africa, through Sicily, through France. She knew him better than anyone. She knew what he would do before he knew it himself. Lisa watched her brother and Nathan argue about resources and priorities. She watched Danny seethe with hatred. She watched Washington observe everything with those calm, knowing eyes. And she knew that whatever happened with the woman in the mud, it would change all of them. Finally, there was Maria Rosenberg, 43 years old, survivor of Auschwitz, brought to Fort Stockton to serve as a witness in the upcoming trials. She had lost everything. Her husband Samuel, her 3 children, David, who was 12, Sarah, who was 9, Benjamin, who was only 6. She had watched them walk into the gas chambers. She had survived because the Nazis needed workers. She had lived while everyone she loved had died, and now she existed in a kind of limbo. Not quite alive, not quite dead, waiting for something, though she did not know what. Maria stood at the window of the barracks that morning and watched the commotion near the latrine trenches. She saw the American soldiers gathering. She saw the German women crying. She saw Nathan Cole kneeling in the mud beside a body, and she recognized the uniform on that body, the same uniform worn by women who had stood watch while her children walked to their deaths. Why, she whispered to no one. Why would they try to save her? She did not know she was asking a question that would consume her for the rest of the day. A question that had no good answer. A question that would force her to confront everything she believed about justice and mercy and what it meant to be human. Back at the mud pit, Nathan Cole was making his decision. He had checked for a pulse, found nothing, checked for breathing, found nothing. By every standard measure, the woman was dead. But something made him pause. He pulled out his penlight, shone it into her eyes, the pupils that should have been fixed and dilated in death. They contracted, barely, almost imperceptibly, a movement so small it could have been a trick of the light. But they contracted. Park Nathan said quietly, "I have pupil response. Impossible." David Park stepped closer. "She has been dead for hours, or maybe she is in profound hypothermia." Nathan explained quickly. In extreme cold, the human heart can slow to almost nothing. Breathing becomes so shallow it is invisible. The body enters a kind of hibernation, protecting itself by shutting down. There is a saying in emergency medicine, Nathan said. Nobody is dead until they are warm and dead. Park stared at him, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. Cole, we have 200 survivors from concentration camps who need medical attention. Do not waste resources on Nazi garbage. Danny Kowalski spat into the mud. Let the Nazi bitch freeze. My grandmother died because of people like her. No one said anything. The Texas wind blew through carrying dust and the smell of dry grass. Then a voice spoke. Calm, certain, James Washington. Let him try, sir. Everyone turned to look at the black soldier. He stood straight, eyes looking directly at Park. We are not them, Washington said. We do not get to decide who is not worth saving just because we hate what they did. That is what they did. That is what made them monsters. He paused. Let the weight of his words settle. My father could not vote until he was 30 years old. My grandfather was a slave. I know what it is like when the system decides you are not a person, and I know the only thing that stops us from becoming monsters is refusing to act like them. Silence hung in the hot air. Park looked at Washington, then at Nathan, then at the woman in the mud. 1 hour, he finally said. You get 1 hour. If she does not respond, you move to the survivors. Clear. Clear, sir. Nathan turned to the German women standing nearby. Help me carry her. They stared at him like he had spoken an alien language. They had expected execution, expected to be left to die, expected anything except an American soldier trying to save one of their own. They lifted the frozen woman carefully. Her body was rigid, her limbs locked in position. She weighed perhaps 90 pounds. Malnutrition had consumed whatever healthy weight she had once carried. As they moved through the camp, prisoners watched, some with confusion, some with grim satisfaction, thinking the Americans were moving a corpse for burial. But when they realized the Americans were carrying her toward the medical building, the mood shifted. Maria Rosenberg stood near the barracks entrance, skeletal, hollow-eyed, 43 years old but looking 70. 18 months of forced labor and starvation had destroyed her body, but not her mind, not her memory. She watched them carry the German woman past her, and she asked the question that everyone was thinking, why not angry, not bitter, just genuinely confused? Why her Nathan met her eyes? Because she is dying. We are all dying, Maria said, but we did not choose to wear that uniform. There was no answer to that. Nathan knew it, but he kept walking. The medical station was a converted horse barn, hastily cleared, equipped with whatever supplies the regiment had brought. Hay still stuck to the walls. The smell of horses lingered beneath the antiseptic. Lisa Park looked up as they entered. Her eyes widened when she saw the German uniform. Nathan, what? Profound hypothermia, possible hypothermic cardiac arrest, I need blankets, warm IV fluids, thermometer. Now. Lisa hesitated for only a second. Then she moved. They had been through too much together for her to question him during a medical emergency. They laid the woman on a gurney. Nathan cut away the uniform, checking for injuries. What he found made him stop. 20 linear scars across her back, recently healed. Whip marks, 3 circular burns on her left shoulder blade. Cigarette burns. Torture marks. Lisa, look at this. She leaned in. Her eyes widened. She was tortured. By her own people. Nathan checked the woman's core temperature with a rectal thermometer. The reading made him close his eyes. 78.9 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, she should be dead. The medical literature said survival was possible, but rare. Vanishingly rare. Nathan had never seen anyone survive below 80 degrees, but here she was. Pupils still reactive, heart possibly still beating somewhere deep inside that frozen chest. He made his decision. Start rewarming protocol, slow and steady. We bring her up 1 degree per hour. No faster. Too fast and her heart will stop. They wrapped her in blankets. Started an IV line with warm saline. Placed heated packs around her neck, armpits, and groin. The places where major blood vessels ran close to the surface. And they waited. Outside, a crowd was gathering. Word had spread. The Americans were trying to save a Nazi nurse. Reactions ranged from confusion to fury. Sandra Muller stood at the window watching. She was 35 years old, former school teacher. Her husband had been an SS officer who insisted she serve the rice alongside him. She had complied. She had watched. She had done nothing to stop anything. And now she watched an American try to save one of her own. Beside her, a younger woman named Ilse was crying silently. She was good, Ilse whispered in German that Nathan could not understand but somehow felt. She tried to help. She gave food to prisoners. They beat her for it. Inside the barn, Nathan checked vitals every 5 minutes. For the first hour, nothing changed. The woman remained suspended between life and death. Her temperature rose to 81 degrees, but no pulse, no breath, no sign that anything he was doing mattered. Danny Kowalski appeared in the doorway, his face set with anger barely contained. 3 more survivors died in the barracks. While you are in here playing God with a Nazi, then go help them, Danny. There are other medics. I am needed here. She does not need you. She needs a grave. Get out. You are wasting time on, I said, get out. Nathan's voice cracked like a whip. Danny stood frozen, rage in his eyes. Nathan looked straight at him. You want to help the dying? Go help them. But do not stand here and tell me who deserves medical care. I am a medic. I treat patients. Period. Danny left, his footsteps angry on the wooden floor. Lisa cleared her throat. He is not wrong, you know. I know. Nathan's voice was softer now, tired. But Lisa, if I walk away from her, if I decide she is not worth saving because of what she wore, then what am I? She did not answer. There was no good answer, just choices and living with them. Hour 2 brought the first change. The woman's temperature had risen to 82.2 degrees. And then Nathan felt it. A pulse, faint, irregular, barely there, but present. 30 beats per minute, weak and thready, but a heartbeat nonetheless. Lisa, I have a pulse. She checked for herself, her eyes widened. My God, get Captain Park. Park arrived 5 minutes later, skeptical. But when Nathan guided his fingers to the woman's carotid artery, that skepticism transformed into shock. How is this possible? I do not know, sir. But she is alive. Barely, but alive. Outside the window, Sandra saw the Americans' reactions and understood. She pressed her hand against the glass and whispered, Elena, Elena, you are alive. The woman's name was Elena Hartmann. She was 24 years old. She had joined the German Medical Auxiliary 8 months earlier because her brother was an SS officer who insisted, who used family pressure and threats to force her compliance. She had witnessed atrocities. She had participated in the system. She had stood watch while people died. But she had also smuggled bread to prisoners 3 times. She had been caught the 3rd time, beaten nearly to death, scheduled for transfer to a punishment battalion. And then the typhus came. The senior officers fled, and she was left behind. She had collapsed that morning, her body finally giving up. She had felt the cold taking her, had welcomed it as an end to choices she could not live with and could not escape. But Nathan Cole had other plans. He was going to make her live, make her face what she had done. Death would have been escape. Life would be accountability. At hour 4, Elena Hartman's heart beat 50 times per minute. Her temperature reached 89.6 degrees. Her eyes began to flutter behind closed lids. She was coming back. And everyone watching knew that what happened next would define not just her fate, but who they all chose to be. Maria Rosenberg still stood at the window of her barracks. She had not moved in 4 hours. Could not move. Could not look away. She watched them save the woman who wore the same uniform as those who had murdered her children. And she felt something she did not expect. Not rage, not hatred, not even grief. She felt confused because Maria remembered something. Something she had buried so deep she had almost forgotten it. A night in January. Auschwitz. Her daughter Rosa was dying, starving to death inch by inch, and a young nurse had come to her. A German nurse with blonde hair and frightened eyes. The nurse had pressed something into Maria's hand. A piece of bread. Her own ration. For the child she had whispered. Tell no one. Rosa had lived 3 more weeks because of that bread. 3 more weeks of watching her daughter die slowly. 3 more weeks of hope that was really just prolonged torture. And now Maria watched them save that same nurse, the one who had given her bread and broken her heart. And she did not know how to feel. She did not know if she wanted Elena Hartman to live or die. She only knew that the world had become far more complicated than she had ever imagined, and that the answers she had thought were simple had turned to smoke and blown away on the Texas wind. The sun climbed higher over Fort Stockton. The windmill turned, the cattle lowed in the distance. And inside a converted horse barn, a woman who should have been dead drew breath after breath, each one a miracle or a curse depending on who you asked. Nathan Cole watched her vital signs stabilize, watched color slowly return to her lips, watched life fight its way back into a body that had given up. And he wondered if he had made the right choice, or simply the only choice he could live with. Elena Hartman's first breath in hours was a gasp that tore through the medical station like a gunshot. Her body convulsed, back arching, muscles seizing, every nerve ending firing at once as her nervous system rebooted from the edge of death. Her eyes flew open, seeing everything and nothing. Wild, terrified. The eyes of someone dragged back from a place they had accepted as final. Hold her steady. Nathan's hands were on her shoulders as Lisa grabbed her legs. The woman thrashed against them, fighting consciousness itself, fighting the return to a world she had tried to leave, making sounds that were not quite words, not quite screams, something in between. The sound of a soul being forced back into a body that had already said goodbye. Elena. Elena Hartman. Nathan did not know if she could hear him. His voice was calm despite the chaos. Practiced. The voice of a man who had talked dozens of dying soldiers back from the edge. You are safe. American hospital. The word American penetrated. Her thrashing stopped, replaced by a different kind of terror. Her eyes focused, found Nathan's face, found his uniform. An American soldier. She knew what that meant. The propaganda had been clear. Americans tortured prisoners. Americans showed no mercy to those who served the Reich. Bitte nicht töten. The words came out broken, desperate, German crumbling into English. Please, not kill. Nathan kept his voice steady. Safe. You are safe. I am doctor. Elena searched his face for cruelty, for the hatred she expected, for the violence she had been promised. She found only exhaustion. Why the question emerged in English now. Clearer, more coherent. Why you saved me because you were dying. And I am a medic, but I am guard. I am enemy. You were dying, he repeated it simply, like it was the only answer that mattered. Because to him, it was. Now lie still. Your temperature is 89 degrees. We need to get you to 95. Elena lay back, tears streaming down her face, cutting clean tracks through the grime and mud that still clung to her skin. She whispered something in German, so quiet Nathan almost missed it. But Lisa heard. Lisa, who had studied German in college. Lisa, who understood every word. She said she does not deserve this. Nathan looked at the woman on the gurney, this woman who had served the machinery of death, This woman who bore the scars of her own people's punishment on her back. This woman who should be dead and was not. Maybe she does not, he said quietly, but that is not my decision to make. Outside, the converted barn faces pressed against windows. Prisoners watching with fury and confusion. German women watching with disbelief and tears. American soldiers with various degrees of approval and disgust written across their features. Word had spread through the camp like wildfire through dry Texas brush. The Americans saved one. The Americans brought a Nazi back from the dead. And now everyone wanted to know why. The crowd that gathered in the yard was not organized, not planned. It formed the way all mobs form. One person stopping to watch, then another, until suddenly there were 50 people standing in the April sun, their shadows stretching across the packed dirt, their voices rising in a murmur that grew louder by the minute. Maria Rosenberg stood at the front. She had not meant to lead anything, had not meant to become the voice of the survivors. But grief has a way of making leaders out of people who never asked for the role. And Maria's grief was deeper than anyone's. She had watched them carry Elena into the medical station, had watched for 4 hours as the Americans worked to save a woman who had worn the same uniform as those who murdered her children. And now she stood in the yard surrounded by other survivors, and she did not know what she felt. Anger, yes, but also something else. Something she could not name. The 7 remaining German women huddled on the other side of the yard, surrounded by American soldiers whose rifles were ready, but whose faces were uncertain. No one had given orders for this confrontation. No one had planned it. It had simply happened. The way inevitable things always happen. They stayed. Maria's voice carried across the yard, in English, in German, in Yiddish, making sure everyone understood. They could have run. When the officers fled, they could have run too. But they stayed. They watched us die. And now the Americans saved one of them while our people die in the barracks. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Where is justice? Maria asked. Where is the justice we were promised? Someone threw a stone. It clattered against the dirt near the German women's feet. One of them flinched. Another started crying. Nathan Cole pushed through the crowd. He had heard the commotion from inside the medical station, had left Lisa monitoring Elena and come running. Not because he had answers, not because he knew what to say, but because he could not hide in that barn while the world fell apart outside. Maria, listen to me, she turned, and the look in her eyes made him stop. Not anger, something worse. Betrayal. You save her while our people die. You save Nazi nurse while survivors get nothing. I saved a woman who was dying, a Nazi woman who was dying, a human being who was dying. His voice rose, not in anger, in desperation. The desperation of a man trying to explain something he barely understood himself. You want me to decide who deserves medical care based on their uniform, based on their crimes? Where does that stop, Maria? Do I refuse to treat wounded German soldiers? Do I only save people who pass some moral purity test that I get to design? He took a breath. The Texas sun beat down on all of them. Sweat ran down his face, down everyone's faces. The heat was oppressive. The tension worse. I'm a medic. I took an oath. That oath does not have exceptions for people I hate. It says I treat the sick, period. If I start making exceptions, I become something I cannot live with. Maria stared at him. This American who had saved the enemy. This man who spoke of oaths while her children's ashes blew across Poland. And then she said something no one expected. She gave me bread once. The yard went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. In January, at Auschwitz, when my daughter was dying, this nurse, this Elena, she gave me her ration. She whispered for the child. Maria's voice cracked, the words coming out in pieces. Like broken glass she was trying to hold without cutting herself. My daughter Rosa lived 3 more weeks because of that bread. Nathan stared at her. 3 weeks. 3 more weeks of life. It should have been a gift. Then why are you angry? I saved her. Maria's tears came freely now, running down the hollows of her cheeks, dripping onto the Texas dirt. Because 3 more weeks meant 3 more weeks watching my daughter starve. Because that bread gave me hope. And hope in that place was cruelty. Because she wore that uniform, and I do not know how to forgive that, even though she tried to help. She turned to face the crowd. Survivors who had suffered alongside her, who had lost as much as she had, who were looking to her for answers she did not have. This guard gave me bread. She also stood watch while others were beaten. She helped prisoners in secret and participated in the system that killed us. She is both. Maria's voice broke completely, and I do not know what to do with that. She looked back at Nathan. You save her because you are a good man. Maybe that is right, but it does not feel right. The world is broken, Nathan said quietly, but we are still stuck living in it anyway. The tension did not resolve. It simply exhausted itself. Survivors drifted away, some muttering, some silent, some crying. The German women remained huddled together, safe for now, but knowing that safety was temporary. Sandra Muller approached Nathan as the crowd dispersed. Her English was hesitant, broken, but she needed to say something. I thank you. For Elena. Nathan nodded, said nothing. Why you stay? Why not run with the others? Sandra looked at the ground, at her feet, at anywhere except Nathan's eyes, some sick, some afraid. But some, she paused, searching for words in a language that was not hers. Some tired of running. I was teacher before war. My husband SS officer. He say I must serve. I think it's patriotic duty. I was wrong. She finally looked up. I do not know how to be that woman again. Teacher woman. Good woman. I only know I cannot run. I must face what comes. Nathan did not know how to respond. What do you say to someone who has confessed to being part of a machine of death? What comfort can you offer? What judgment is enough? He said nothing. Because sometimes silence is the only honest answer. Inside the medical station, Elena Hartman's temperature continued to rise. 91 degrees, 92. Her heartbeat strengthened, her breathing deepened. Color returned to her skin. She was going to live, but living would be the hardest thing she ever did. 3 days passed, 3 days of tension and uncertainty, 3 days of survivors watching the medical station with anger and confusion. 3 days of German women huddling together, waiting for a judgment that had not yet come. 3 days of American soldiers trying to maintain order in a situation no training manual had prepared them for. And 3 days for Nathan Cole to wonder if he had made the right choice. On the morning of the 4th day, Danny Kowalski came to him. Nathan was in the mess tent drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring at nothing. Lost in thoughts he could not escape. Danny sat down across from him. His face was different. The anger that had defined it for 3 days was gone, replaced by something else. Confusion, maybe even shame. I found something, Danny said, in her belongings, the German woman. Elena. He placed a small notebook on the table, worn leather cover, pages yellowed with age and handling. Her diary. You should read it. Nathan looked at the notebook, then at Danny. Why Danny could not meet his eyes. Just read it. Nathan opened the diary. The handwriting was small and neat, German for the most part, but some entries in broken English, as if Elena had been practicing a language she hoped would save her someday. He began to read. November 15th, 1944. Today, I saw them beat an old woman because she fell. She could not stand up. They beat her until she stopped moving. I did nothing. I wanted to scream, but I did nothing. I am coward. I am monster who watches. Nathan turned the page. December 3rd, 1944. I took bread from my dinner. I hid it in my coat. I gave it to a woman with a small child. She cried. I wanted to cry too. This is the only thing I can do. It is not enough. It will never be enough. Another page. January 28th, 1945. Supervisor Schmidt caught me. She saw me give food. She beat me. 20 lashes. I did not cry in front of her. I cried later alone in darkness. My back hurts, but my heart hurts more. I do not regret the bread. I regret I cannot do more. Nathan closed the diary. Danny was watching him. I still hate her. Danny's voice was quiet. She was still part of the system. I know. But she also tried. In her weak, pathetic, not enough way. She tried. Danny stood up, walked to the door of the mess tent, stopped. I do not know how to judge someone who is both monster and human. The world did not teach me how to do that. He left. Nathan sat alone with the diary. with the words of a woman who had participated in atrocities and tried to resist them, who had failed at both evil and good, who had been too weak to fully commit to either. And he wondered if that made her better or worse than someone who had chosen a side. That afternoon, Nathan went to see Elena. She was sitting up now, strong enough to eat, strong enough to talk, strong enough to face whatever questions he had. "I read your diary." Elena closed her eyes. "So I know you gave bread to prisoners 3 times. 3 times is not enough to save anyone. I also know you were beaten for it. 20 lashes, 3 cigarette burns. Pain does not erase guilt." Nathan sat down in the chair beside her bed. The converted barn was quiet. Lisa was checking on other patients. They were alone. "Elena, why did you stay? Why not run when the senior officers fled?" She opened her eyes, tears ran down her face, but her voice was steady. "Because I was tired. Tired of running. From what I did. From what I became. I thought maybe if I stayed, if I faced what was coming, maybe that would be the only honest thing left to do." She took a shaky breath. "Death would have been easier. I lay in that mud and I welcomed the cold. I wanted it to end. I wanted to escape the faces that haunt me every night." Her voice broke. "But you saved me." Nathan leaned forward. "I did not save you to make you happy. I saved you because I have to look in the mirror every day. That is selfish reason. Maybe. But it is the truth." Elena looked at him for a long moment. This American who had dragged her back from death, who had not asked if she deserved it, who had simply done what medics do. "You forced me to live. Forced me to face justice. Forced me to carry the weight of what I did every day until I die." Her voice was almost a whisper now. "That is cruel mercy, Nathan Cole. The greatest gift and punishment anyone has ever given me." Nathan stood, walked to the door, stopped. "Elena, the women you helped spoke for you." Maria Rosenberg told the crowd about the bread. "That will not save you from judgment, but it means something." Her eyes filled with tears again. "It is not enough. No, it is not. But it is something." He left her there, alive, waiting for justice, and went back to work. Because there were still sick people who needed help, still survivors who needed care, still a world that was broken and needed whatever healing he could provide. The sun set over Fort Stockton that evening, red and gold spilling across the sky like blood and hope mixed together. A cowboy rode past on the road outside the fence, tipped his hat at the guards, kept riding. Normal life continued, even here. Even now, Nathan stood at the fence and watched the colors fade, watched the stars begin to emerge, watched Texas become itself again as night fell. Lisa found him there. "You did the right thing." Her voice was quiet. "Certain. Did I? You saved a life. That is what we do. I saved a life that caused deaths. I saved someone who watched children walk into gas chambers and did nothing." Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she said something he did not expect. "My grandmother came to America from Korea in 1920. She told me stories about the Japanese occupation, about the things the soldiers did, the women they took, the villages they burned." She paused. "But she also told me about a Japanese soldier who warned her village before a raid, who risked his life to save people he was supposed to kill. He was executed for it, shot by his own officers." Lisa looked at Nathan. Was that soldier a monster or a hero? He wore the uniform of the oppressor. He participated in the system. But he also tried to save people. Both things are true. Nathan did not respond. "I do not think the question is whether Elena deserves to be saved," Lisa continued. "I think the question is whether we can still recognize humanity when it shows up in a Nazi uniform. Whether we have the courage to see complexity instead of just enemies. And if we cannot, then we become what we are fighting against." She touched his arm. "You saw humanity in that mud. Most people would have walked away. You stayed. That matters." Lisa left him alone with the stars. Nathan stood there for a long time, thinking about choices, about mercy, about the weight of saving a life that had been part of taking so many others. He did not have answers, but he had made a choice, and now he had to live with it, just like Elena would have to live with hers. The next morning brought new developments. A telegram arrived from headquarters. A formal tribunal would be convened at Fort Stockton in 1 week. All surviving German personnel would be interviewed. Testimony would be gathered. Charges would be filed. Justice was coming, whatever that meant. Nathan went to tell Elena. She took the news without surprise, without fear, almost with relief. I expected this. It is right. You could face death, Nathan said. Execution for war crimes, I know. You should prepare a defense. Find reasons they should spare you. Elena shook her head. I have no defense. I did what I did. I wore what I wore. I was part of what I was part of. That I felt bad about it. That I sometimes tried to be less evil. That does not make me good. It makes me a coward who could not fully commit to evil or fully resist it. Nathan studied her face, looking for something. He was not sure what. Then why did you write in your diary? Why record the bread, the beatings? The guilt, because I needed someone to know. Even if that someone was only future me. I needed proof that some part of me knew it was wrong. Even if that part was too weak to stop it. She met his eyes. My diary is my confession. Read it all. Show it to the tribunal. Let them see who I really was. Not hero, not complete monster. Just a person who failed. Nathan left her with those words echoing in his mind. A person who failed. Perhaps that was all any of them were in the end. People who failed. In big ways or small. In ways that killed millions or in ways that only hurt themselves. The question was not whether we failed. The question was what we did with the failure. As he walked across the yard, Nathan saw Maria Rosenberg sitting on a bench near the fence, alone, staring at nothing. He sat down beside her, said nothing, just sat. After a long silence, Maria spoke. I dreamed of Rosa last night, my daughter. She was running in a field of flowers, laughing, the way she used to laugh before. Her voice was distant, far away. In the dream, I asked her if she was angry at me for surviving, angry at Elena for the bread that made her die slower. Nathan waited. Rosa just laughed. She said, Mama, anger is for the living. The dead only remember love. Maria turned to look at him. I do not know if that dream means anything, but I woke up and I did not hate Elena anymore. I still cannot forgive her, but I do not hate her. Nathan nodded slowly. I do not know what to do with the feelings I have, Maria continued. This woman helped kill my family. This woman tried to save my daughter. Both things, same woman. How do I hold both in my heart? I do not know. Nathan admitted, I do not think anyone knows. I think we just have to carry it, all of it. The hate and the gratitude and the confusion. We carry it because putting it down means pretending it is simple. And it is not simple. Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she almost smiled. Almost. You are a strange man, Nathan Cole. You save enemy and sit with survivor and pretend you have no answers. Most men pretend they have all answers. Most men have not seen what we have seen. No, they have not. She stood up, brushed off her dress, looked at the medical station where Elena was still recovering. I will not testify against her at the tribunal. I will not ask for her death, but I will not ask for mercy either. I will tell truth, all of truth, the bread and the uniform and everything between. That is all anyone can ask. Maria nodded, walked away, left Nathan alone on the bench. The wind picked up, blowing dust across the yard, rattling the windmill, carrying the smell of cattle and grass and Texas earth. Nathan sat there until the sun began to set, thinking about truth, thinking about mercy, thinking about the impossible weight of being human in a world that had forgotten what humanity meant. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more challenges, more impossible choices. But for now, in this moment, there was only the wind and the fading light and the knowledge that he had saved a life. Whether that life deserved saving, whether saving it was right or wrong, whether any of it mattered in the end, those questions would have to wait for tomorrow. Tonight, he would simply sit with the weight of what he had done and hope that somehow, someday, it would make sense. The tribunal convened on a Tuesday morning, October 1945, 6 months after the mud, 6 months after Nathan Cole pressed his fingers to a frozen neck and found something no one expected. 6 months of waiting, healing, wondering what justice would look like when it finally arrived. Nuremberg had captured the world's attention. The famous trials, the architects of genocide sitting in the dock, Göring, Hess, Ribbentrop, names that would echo through history as synonyms for evil. But there were other trials, smaller ones, quieter ones. For the people who had not designed the machinery of death but had operated it. The guards, the nurses, the administrators, the ones who had followed orders and watched and done nothing. Elena Hartman sat in a courtroom in a converted schoolhouse in a town most Americans had never heard of. She wore a plain gray dress provided by the tribunal. Her blonde hair was pulled back, revealing the gaunt angles of her face. 6 months of recovery had not erased the marks of what she had endured, what she had done, what she had become. 22 other women sat with her, all former personnel from various camps, all waiting to learn if their lives would end on a gallows or in a prison cell, all stripped of the uniforms that had defined them. Just defendants now, just the accused, just human beings facing the consequences of inhuman choices. Nathan Cole sat in the gallery. He had traveled from his new posting to attend, needed to see how his choice would conclude, needed to know if saving her had been right or wrong, or something in between that had no name. The prosecutor was a man named Theodore Hayes, 42 years old, iron gray hair, eyes that had seen every variation of human evil the war had produced. His job was to document, to identify, to build cases, to make sure that what had happened would never be forgotten and never be forgiven. He approached Elena with methodical precision, each question a brick in a wall he was building around her. State your full name. Elena Joanna Hartman, your position during the war. Medical auxiliary, Auschwitz-Birkenau, September 1944 to April 1945. Describe your duties. Elena's voice was steady, almost mechanical, as if she had rehearsed this confession in her mind 1,000 times. I supervised prisoner work details. I distributed food rations. I guarded barracks at night. I kept records of prisoner numbers. Were you aware of the camp's purpose? A pause, then quietly. Yes. Explain your awareness. I knew it was a death camp. I knew people were murdered there, in gas chambers, in executions, through starvation and disease and labor. I knew all of this. Hayes wrote something in his notebook. His face betrayed nothing. Did you participate in executions? No. I did not kill anyone directly. Did you witness executions? Yes. How many? I do not know the exact number. Perhaps 20, perhaps more. And you did nothing to prevent them. It was not a question. Elena's hands tightened in her lap. No, I did nothing. Nathan watched from the gallery. Every answer was another nail in her coffin, and she was hammering them in herself, with terrible honesty, with a refusal to hide behind excuses or explanations. Did you ever strike a prisoner? Hayes asked. The longest pause yet. Elena's breathing quickened. Yes. How many times? Once. Describe the incident. Elena closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice trembled for the first time. A woman, perhaps 50 years old. She tried to steal bread from the supply room. My supervisor ordered me to beat her. I refused. She said if I did not, she would report me for insubordination, that I would be sent to a punishment battalion. Elena opened her eyes. Tears ran down her face. So I hit her, with a wooden rod, hard enough to draw blood, and then the woman was sent to the punishment barracks. I do not know what happened to her there. I never saw her again. Hayes closed his notebook. Miss Hartman, based on this testimony, you will be charged with crimes against humanity, specifically participation in the operation of a concentration camp, complicity in the deaths of prisoners through neglect and mistreatment, and assault of a prisoner. Do you understand these charges, Vim? Do you have anything to say in your defense? Elena was quiet for a long moment. The courtroom waited. Nathan leaned forward in his seat. Then she spoke. I have no defense. I did these things. I wore this uniform. I was part of a machine that murdered people whose only crime was being born wrong or thinking wrong. I sometimes tried to help. I gave food 3 times. I looked away when prisoners were too weak to work. But this does not erase what I did. It does not bring back the dead. I understand this. Hayes studied her. You are very calm. I have had 6 months to prepare for this conversation. 6 months that I should not have had. She looked into the gallery, found Nathan's face among the crowd. Sergeant Cole gave me these months. I will not waste them with lies. Hayes nodded slowly. The prosecution will recommend a sentence appropriate to your crimes. Elena did not flinch. I expect nothing less. The trial continued for 3 weeks. Witness after witness took the stand. Survivors who had suffered, who had lost everything, who wanted the world to know what had been done to them. Maria Rosenberg was called to testify. She approached the witness stand slowly, frail but determined, 43 years old but looking decades older. The camps had taken everything from her except her voice, and she intended to use it. The defense attorney, a weary German lawyer assigned by the tribunal, asked her about Elena Hartmann. Mrs. Rosenberg, you have stated that the defendant provided you with food. Is this correct? Yes, 3 times. Can you describe these incidents? Maria's voice was clear, quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. The first time was January. My daughter Rosa was dying of starvation. Elena saw me crying in the barracks. She came back later with bread from her own ration. She whispered to give it to the child. Maria paused, steadied herself. My daughter lived 3 more weeks because of that bread. Did you request this food? No. She gave it without being asked. What risk did this pose to the defendant? If she was caught, she would be beaten, perhaps killed. The SS did not tolerate guards helping prisoners, and yet she did it 3 times. Yes. The defense attorney pressed forward. Mrs. Rosenberg, in your opinion, does this mitigate her crimes? Raya was silent for a long moment. The courtroom held its breath. When she spoke, her voice trembled. I do not know. My daughter is dead. Elena's bread gave me 3 more weeks with her. 3 more weeks of watching her suffer. I do not know if that was kindness or cruelty. I do not know if small good actions can balance large evil ones. I do not know how to measure guilt and mercy on the same scale. But you are testifying on her behalf. Maria straightened in her chair. I am testifying for the truth. The truth must include everything. She helped me. She hurt others. Both things are true. I will not lie by leaving out the parts that are difficult. The prosecutor called other witnesses, survivors who had seen Elena on guard duty, who testified she had never intervened during beatings, who had watched her stand silent while atrocities occurred. Hannah Stern, whose friend had been the woman Elena struck, testified through tears. She says she felt bad about hitting my friend. She says she was forced. But my friend died in the punishment barracks 3 days later. Hannah's voice broke. Elena's guilt does not bring her back. Elena's small kindnesses do not balance murder. The courtroom absorbed her words, the weight of them, the truth of them, because she was right. 3 times giving bread did not balance witnessing 20 executions. Feeling guilty did not bring back the dead. Trying was not the same as succeeding, but it was also not the same as not trying at all. The judges deliberated for 3 days. When they returned with verdicts, the courtroom was packed. Survivors wanting to see justice, families of the accused wanting mercy, journalists wanting stories, soldiers wanting closure. 12 guards received death sentences. The ones who had actively participated in executions, who had been cruel beyond their duties, who had shown enjoyment in suffering. 7 received life imprisonment. 3 received 20-year sentences. 1 was acquitted. Evidence showed she had been coerced at gunpoint and had actively sabotaged orders whenever possible. Elena Hartmann received 15 years of hard labor. The judge read his reasoning. Miss Hartmann, you participated in atrocities. You wore the uniform. You followed orders that resulted in suffering and death. This court finds you guilty of crimes against humanity. He paused, looked at her over his glasses. However, evidence suggests limited resistance within the constraints of fear. Testimony shows attempts to provide aid at personal risk. Medical evidence confirms torture by your own command for disobedience. These factors do not absolve you, but they provide context. You will serve 15 years. You will work. You will face the weight of your actions every day. Some will say this is too lenient. Some will say too harsh. Such is the nature of justice when simple answers do not exist. Elena stood to hear the verdict, hands clasped, face expressionless. When the judge finished, she spoke clearly. Thank you, I accept this judgment. The judge looked at her with something that might have been curiosity. You have nothing more to say. Elena looked around the courtroom, at the survivors, at the families of other defendants, at Nathan Cole sitting in the back row. I am guilty. I did these things. I wore this uniform. I was part of a machine that murdered millions. That I felt bad about it, that I tried sometimes to help. This does not make me good. It makes me a coward who could not fully commit to evil or fully resist it. Her voice cracked. I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I ask only to be allowed to live with what I did, to carry it every day until I die. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Nathan found her after the verdict, before she was transferred to begin her sentence. They sat across from each other in a small room. Guards outside the door, a clock ticking on the wall, time running out. 15 years, Elena said. Less than I expected, more than some people wanted. Yes, silence stretched between them. So much to say, no words adequate. Do you regret it? Elena asked finally. Saving me, Nathan thought for a long time before answering. Every day for 6 months I have asked myself that question. The answer is this: I do not regret making a choice I can live with. You committed crimes. You faced justice. If I had let you die, you would have escaped all of that. You would have died a Nazi. Instead, you will live as a human being who has to reckon with having been a Nazi. So you saved me to punish me. No, I saved you because I had to be someone who tries, even when trying is complicated. Even when trying means saving someone who maybe does not deserve saving. Elena absorbed this. I think death would have been easier. Probably. But you do not get to choose the easy way. Not anymore. Elena reached out, pressed her palm against the glass that separated them. A barrier between two worlds. Between what had been and what would be. I will remember this. When they judge me. When they sentence me. When I serve every day of those 15 years. I will remember that an American soldier gave me life when I deserved death. And I will try to deserve that life, even though I never truly can. Nathan pressed his palm against the glass on his side, matching hers. Do not do it for me. Do it for yourself, and for all the people you could not save. I will do it for them, for Maria, for her daughter, for the woman I hit, for all the faces that haunt me every night. Nathan stood. I am not the one to forgive you, Elena. I do not have that right. But I hope you find a way to live with yourself. I hope so too. But I do not think I ever will. And perhaps that is also right. Guards came, took her away. Nathan watched her disappear through a doorway into a future that held nothing but hard labor and harder memories. And he wondered if he had done the right thing, or simply the only thing he could live with. The years passed, Nathan finished his service, returned home to Tennessee, used the GI Bill to attend medical school, became a surgeon specializing in trauma, working with refugees, displaced persons, the broken people left behind by war. He married a nurse he met in Germany, had 3 children, built a life that looked normal from the outside, but the war never left him. Fort Stockton never left him. The choice to save Elena Hartman never left him. She wrote to him once a year from prison, brief notes about work in the prison hospital, about learning medicine from other prisoners, some of whom were Jewish doctors imprisoned for resistance activities, about wrestling with guilt daily, about the impossibility of redemption, about living with truth. She never asked for forgiveness, never claimed to have paid her debt, just acknowledged that she was alive and that this was both punishment and gift. 1960. Elena was released early for good behavior. 14 years and 8 months served. She was 39 years old, gray-haired, worn beyond her years. She wrote to Nathan asking if they could meet. He debated for 2 weeks, then agreed. They met in Munich, a small cafe near the wall that now divided Berlin, another division in a world full of them. Elena looked older than he expected. He looked exactly as she remembered, though, with more gray in his hair. They sat across from each other, coffee growing cold between them, neither knowing how to start. I do not know why I wanted to see you, Elena finally said. Neither do I. More silence. What do I do now? Nathan stirred his coffee, stared at the dark liquid swirling in the cup. I do not know. Live. Help people if you can. Try to balance scales that will never balance. Is that what you do? Yes, I work with refugees, displaced persons, people broken by war. I save who I can. And does it help this work? It helps me. Whether it helps them, you would have to ask them. Elena absorbed this. I want to be a nurse, a real one. Work with people no one else wants to help, not to earn forgiveness, just to try to be human. Then do that. Will it be enough? No, but it is something. They finished their coffee. At the door, they shook hands awkwardly. Goodbye, Elena. Goodbye, Nathan. Thank you for everything. They never met again. Elena worked as a nurse in Munich for 18 years. She cared for the homeless, the addicted, the outcast, the people society had forgotten or chosen not to see. She never married, never had children, lived simply in a small apartment, spent almost nothing, gave most of her salary to charities supporting Holocaust survivors. She kept a diary where she recorded every patient she helped, building a ledger against the ledger of her crimes. She knew it would never balance, but she tried anyway. She died in 1978 at 57 years old. Cancer, the disease that does not care about guilt or innocence. That takes everyone the same way in the end. 200 people attended her funeral, all patients she had helped, all people she had touched in those 18 years of trying to be human. Her will left everything to a charity for Holocaust survivors, with a note that read simply, "I can never repay, but I must try." Nathan Cole learned of her death from her executor, who sent him a final letter she had written before she died. "Dear Nathan, if you are reading this, I am dead. This is good. I am tired. I want you to know what your choice meant. You saved me from the mud. But more than that, you forced me to live with what I did. This was the greatest gift and punishment. I spent 33 years trying to become better than what I was. I never succeeded, but I tried, because you made me try. You did not save a good person. You saved a guilty one, and you made her face that guilt every day for 33 years. I do not know if that was mercy or justice. Perhaps both. Thank you for believing that even a monster could do something human. I will die with my sins, but I will die having tried. That is more than I deserved. Your patient, always, Elena Hartman." Nathan read the letter 3 times, then he sat in his study and cried. For the first time since 1945. For Elena, for himself, for all the impossible choices that war forces people to make. His wife found him there, asked if he had done the right thing all those years ago. He thought for a long time. I do not know. But I did the human thing, and I would do it again. 1995. 50 years after liberation. A memorial ceremony was held at the site of Fort Stockton's former detention facility. The buildings were long gone, replaced by a small park with a stone monument listing the names of those who had passed through, survivors and perpetrators alike, all reduced to names carved in granite. Nathan Cole attended, 78 years old now, confined to a wheelchair, body worn but mind still sharp. Maria Rosenberg spoke, 93 years old, frail but strong-voiced, the last living connection to those terrible days. She told stories of the camp, of liberation, of the complicated aftermath. Then she said something that made everyone stop. I want to tell you about a guard named Elena Hartman and an American medic named Nathan Cole. She told the whole story. The frozen woman, the screaming Germans insisting she was dead, the medic who refused to believe it, the impossible rescue, the complicated aftermath. This story has no clean ending, Maria said. Elena was guilty. She was also human. Nathan saved her not because she deserved it, but because he needed to be the kind of person who tries. Was this redemption? No. Was this justice? Perhaps. Was this mercy? I do not know, but I know this. He remained human in a place designed to destroy humanity. He showed mercy when mercy was hard. Perhaps that matters. Perhaps it does not. But it is something. It is something. After the ceremony, a young journalist approached Nathan. Sir, do you regret saving her? Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Every day for 50 years, I have asked myself that question. The answer is this. I do not regret making a choice I can live with. She committed crimes. She faced justice. She spent her life trying to atone. If I had let her die, she would have died a Nazi. Instead, she lived as a human being who had to reckon with having been a Nazi. Is that redemption? No. Is it justice? Maybe. Is it mercy? I do not know. But it is the choice I made, and I can live with it. Nathan Cole died in the year 2000. He was 83 years old, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, a life full of saving others coming to its natural end. At his funeral, his daughter read from his journal, an entry written on April 13, 1945. Today I saved a woman who helped run a concentration camp. I do not know if this was right. I just know it was human. And if we lose our humanity fighting monsters, then the monsters win. I chose to remain human. Whatever comes from that choice, I will carry it. Because carrying hard choices is what being human means. The measure of our humanity is not in what we do when things are easy. It is in what we choose when everything argues against it. When the world says hatred, we can choose compassion. When circumstances say abandon, we can choose to carry. When fear says turn away, we can choose to stay. Nathan Cole chose to save a woman the world said deserved death. Elena Hartman chose to live with her guilt rather than escape into the grave. Neither found peace. Both found purpose. And their story remains a reminder that mercy is not weakness, that justice is not simple, that humanity can survive even in places designed to destroy it. If this story challenged you, made you uncomfortable, forced you to question easy answers about good and evil, then it did its job. These stories matter because they remind us that morality is not always clear, that sometimes the right choice is the one we can barely live with, that being human means carrying impossible weight and choosing to stay upright anyway. Like this video, if you believe these gray zones of history deserve remembering. Subscribe if you think we need more stories that challenge rather than comfort. Share it with someone who needs to hear that mercy can be cruel, justice can be merciful, and humanity can survive even in hell. Until next time, remember that our choices define us. Not when they are easy, but when they cost us everything. Choose humanity, even when it hurts. Want to be notified when Claude responds?